One thing a guide should be prepared for is a near drowning accident. And the standard or recommended response is CPR. It's what's taught if you're a Red Cross lifeguard trained or WSI. CPR is the first response. However, I think, especially for us here in the river, in my opinion, I think the first response should be either what's sometimes called a Heimlich maneuver, or I prefer to call like an abdominal compression. First off, this technique works. There's an outfit called L's Associates who have adopted this procedure for the first response to a near drowning victim, which means the person is unconscious, not breathing, they pull them out of the water. L's Associates has been the subcontractors to provide the water safety instructors or lifeguards for a lot of major water theme parks across the country and Disney World. So this is a technique that works. They administer compression on the abdominal or the chest cavity, and they come back. They start breathing again, and they respond, and it works very effectively. Generally, well over 90-some-odd% of the near drowning victims recover just from that, or start breathing on their own just from that procedure alone. Now, if it doesn't work, they do go to CPR techniques, but as a first response, it is definitely a technique that works. Now, there may be critics and say, well, this would be better, but the fact that it's administered so quickly and is so effective that its success can't be refuted. And to rely, saying, well, CPR should be the first response all the time is a little bit too fanatical. One advantage of doing the Heimlich maneuver or an abdominal compression is that if it's done early, it does have the advantage of, if there is water or fluid in the lungs, it allows that material to be expelled very early on. That helps reduce some complications that you get from water being ingested. If it's a lot of water and it goes into the lungs, it will disrupt the red blood cells. Like if you took a slide, you put red blood cells and put fresh water all around it, the red blood cells being salty will absorb, by osmotic pressure, will absorb the water and they'll burst. So you begin a lot of water ingestion isn't healthy. Plus, if there's bacteria in the water and you've gotten some water out initially from that, you reduce the likelihood of complications from pneumonia. So there are definitely advantages to doing this as a first response. Now, the other thing on a practical level for us here is that if you look, we're on a river here that's basically flat. It's flat water, it's sandy bottom, but it's floodplain. And you got banks on the side. Where are you going to be able to administer? Where are you going to be able to lie someone down, do chest compressions, put your mouth and there's no physically you have a real problem being able to administer anything. Now, abdominal compressions can be done right while you're in the water, very quickly, and the biggest thing that everyone agrees on, the quicker you respond to somebody in a near drowning accident, the better off you are. Now, how should you proceed to give these abdominal compressions? Well, first off, it depends a little bit on how big someone is. If you got a small child and you pick them up out of the water, you can lay this small child across your arm, and in the process of just carrying them over to shore, you can have their stomachs lie on here. And I've seen videos of where water is leaving their lungs as they're coming out, and then when they pull them to shore, they're breathing on their own again. And these are people that were unconscious when they're pulled out of the water. Now, if you have someone that's a little bit bigger and you can pick them up and you can lay them up, and it's easier when they're in the water, you can lay them across, so their heads are across this and you're carrying like this. The mere act of carrying the person out of the water is giving abdominal compressions, because your shoulder is pressing in on the abdominal cavity, and if there is fluid, it's coming out of their lungs, and that jostling seems to help, at least from what seems to be reactions when this happens, to help these people start to breathe again. So just to practice the process of getting people extracted from the water, you can administer some kind of first aid response and hopefully get them started breathing before you even get to shore. And then now we've got someone to shore with and they're breathing on their own, there's no mouth-to-mouth contact, and they start much more quickly. Now, if we get to somebody that's bigger, okay, where we physically have to, where it's not, we can't just pick up and go over, we have to actually physically carry them. Now we can use the water to help float, and we can lay them out across the top of us, and we can reach around and compress inward if we want to press with some force, and you can spread over the entire abdominal cavity. And if you do that on yourself, you can feel how you force air out. Now 15% of the drownings are what are called dry drownings. They've actually constricted all the muscles inside their larynx and no water is actually inside. But with these individuals, if there is a compression, it helps to force air out and can actually be beneficial to start them breathing more quickly. Some people may prefer to actually use a more Heimlich maneuver, where it actually is a thrust where the hand is pressed and you press up and in. I am an advocate more of a larger, wider spread pressure up on this because it doesn't cause as much damage internally, and I think it's more effective at getting a more complete expiration of whatever fluid might be in the lungs, and gets a larger exhalation. Okay, let's say we're in the water right now, and we're going to administer an abdominal compression. I can reach around and I can feel where his abdominal cavity is. Now I'm not going to press real hard in this, but you get an idea. You're going to press in with a little bit of force, not too hard. Now the thing is, if we're in the water and we're standing up like this, the water would be up here like this. The water itself would be exerting pressure, which would be fine, but when I let go, the water is still exerting pressure, so there won't be any recovery, backwards from the air going back in. So I'd have to lift up and get him back and let him float, so he's lying more flat. I can get my body up underneath it and raise the person up so they float better, so that it would work. If it's kept vertically, the procedure isn't going to work. There's no inhalation at all. Now, if one prefers, one could do actually where it is the Heimlich, where you find the breastbone and you find this, and you could do it as some people recommend the Heimlich. I prefer an abdominal compression. If we're in the water and there's no other place to lie a person down, I think abdominal compressions is the best way to proceed as a first response.